I'm happy to be here with you all today. Prior to joining Emergenetics, I've spent 34 years in the field of education as a teacher, a coach, and a building administrator. And I'm thrilled to have Melisa with me today. Melisa began her career at the school level working directly with students. She served as a director of learning services as well as a director of social and emotional learning. She now leads comprehensive initiatives to support staff mental health, emotional intelligence, and organizational well-being as the Director of Wellness. So, Melisa, to kick us off, I've noticed that district leaders are rethinking their approach to wellness and the functions supporting it. Given the challenges that we're facing with educator well-being, can you share why and how your role as the Director of Wellness came to be?
Sure. Well, I've been in this role now for a year. I've been in my district for going on 20 years. But as many of us have been discussing just in the field in general, and part of one of the themes that we've been talking about today, that schools and districts really are facing challenges with retaining staff. And so my position was really born directly from that. A lot of us are seeing surges in increased stress levels or reports of staff burnout, increase in mental health challenges. And a lot of that is then resulting in increases in our turnover. So we realized we just really couldn't afford to treat staff mental health and staff wellness as a side. It really needed to become a little bit more at the forefront and embedded into other things that we are doing into our whole system, really. And so, you can't retain educators unless you are thinking about their well-being, and you can't address their well-being unless you address mental health. And so a lot of that is really at the heart of our model. So I'm just going to kind of talk through things rather than sharing the visual, because it looks like I'm having a few technical problems. So I apologize for that. But really, the way that we started things was we crosswalked. We looked at retention research because everything we want to do, we want it to be grounded in reason and in and intention. So we went through and we looked at retention factors, and some of those retention factors include connection, belonging, psychological safety, feeling valued at work, relatedness, autonomy. And a lot of those factors really just fold right into dimensions of wellness and comprehensive wellness. So if you look at any model of wellness, you may have heard of different dimensions of wellness. You can look at financial wellness, environmental wellness, emotional wellness, and so forth. And so as we looked at the research, we noticed that a lot of the trends really pointed to that this was a direct alignment. So we really need to be aligning our systems with that. So we weren't sure what the position would look like. What we knew is that my role was not created to increase perks and kind of do things more on the surface. Chocolate and staff lounges and things like that are great, but we really wanted to go a little deeper into how we can embed well-being, and how we can really lead and retain staff by supporting our team at every level in the system.
So can you tell us a little bit about the model that you built to support wellness in your district?
Absolutely. So with our model, we really want to move away from this idea that we're wanting an individual, we're pointing the finger at someone and we're saying, you have a problem, go fix yourself, go do some more self-care. We really need to change our mindset and think about how we can share with an individual, and how the organization and the individual can find a balance to really look at well-being holistically. So we came up with a 3-part model that really, and the 4th part is the foundation. So it's really built on a foundation of mental health supports. And that's something that fortunately we're starting to talk about more, but we're not where we want to be, I think, in education yet. But we are talking about it, and that's a good thing. So we wanted our model really to be built and grounded on that, because so many of those retention factors are related directly to mental health, right? And so the three factors that really kind of lie on top of that, the three areas, we start with organizational, and that has to do with the infrastructure and the things we do to support our team. That can be anything from benefits, looking at what we're offering, opportunities, resources, events. That also has to do with embedding things into our strategic plan and making sure wellness is part of that. We also are trying to shift really having our PD be meaningful and have it be built sort of around adult learning principles and looking at what our staff really needs. So and we really all have we're all part of the organization, so we all have a part in that, right? And that kind of leads into the second piece, which is relational wellness. And the relational wellness really has to do with enhancing trusting relationships and building teams. And I think that in the group before, they were talking about the importance of just checking in and having that connection with your staff. Well-being really lies within those things. And so, one of the tools that we use that we're talking about today that has just been a game changer for us is Emergenetics. And all of our schools have received what we call the meeting of the minds with Emergenetics. And it's just really incredibly valuable in helping our leaders and our teams understand the differences and the diversity in the way we think and the way we behave, so that we can adapt our practices. And I think when you have that increased self-awareness, we're more positioned to have things like empathy and we can communicate more effectively. And so, we've loved Emergenetics for that reason. But even if you're not using Emergenetics, that relational piece is so critical. And then the last piece is individual. So I am a licensed therapist, but I don't necessarily function in that regard in my role. But we do want to have somebody with some background in mental health so that we can promote mental health learning in our system and work with people one-on-one. So an example is FMLA transition meetings. When you're coming back from FMLA, you might be leaving a baby or coming back from having a surgery, and that can be really impactful to stress levels. So having a chance to talk with somebody and plan for your wellness has been really critical. So, a balance of those three areas is really what we're after with our model.
It sounds just so supportive. So I imagine that while you've kind of talked about the applications of it at the district level, there are many applications beyond the district level. So for the principals in the audience, can you share a couple of ideas that they might take away to apply in their own settings with their own staff?
Well, and our model really is definitely a framework, so it can be applied flexibly. So we actually made a little handout that we're going to share with anybody on the webinar with some very specific hows, how to get started and some ideas and things like that. But I would say, we've really narrowed this down to two overall things. I would say is if you're wanting to start to revamp, the first one is modeling your own wellness. That's huge. If your staff sees you and you're skipping lunch and you're, have a short temper or something like that, they're going to follow suit. That's going to be throughout the culture. And then the second thing would be taking a minute to just reflect on those three areas. What do your systems look like? And have you gotten staff voice into that? Come together and create that culture of wellness together. Have you reflected on how are you building those relationships? Do you have informal check-ins? 2 by 10 is a strategy we use with students. 2 minutes a day, 10 students or for 10 days, focusing on just talking with somebody for 2 minutes. And, that connection just really goes a long way.
And so in closing, what's the one thing you would want everyone in the audience to walk away with?
I would ask everyone in the audience to maybe just reflect for a second on an emotionally challenging time that you had. And if you can picture someone in your mind of someone who was very helpful to you and helped you through a really challenging time. I do this with the staff, and then I ask the staff, you don't have to tell me who it is, but raise your hand if that person is a licensed mental health professional. And do you know how many people raise their hands? Anywhere from 0 to maybe 5 if I have a very large group. But I think what that tells us is the final thought, which is this is something that all of us have a responsibility and have the skills to be able to impact another person's mental health. And, we want those quick fixes for staff wellness and mental health. And really, I think if I were to leave with one idea, it's that we all have a part in it, and we all have the power to make that mindset shift.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me today, Melissa. I think you've shared some outstanding information, and I will turn it back over to Lisa.
Thank you.